Welcome back to another episode of Boom Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry. Today we're talking about some philosophy regression. So, basically, we're talking about when you're evaluating a prospect that is a lot better or significantly better in the previous year than they are the year that they are coming out for the draft. So, this is something that comes up fairly often, I would say, each year. It's not a major trend or whatnot, but it's something that you do run into, and it can happen anywhere, as we've seen before with mid-tier prospects, with low-tier prospects, but occasionally you get them in some high-tier prospects where you sit back and either you watch or you listen and you figure out that they were just kind of better than they were this year, last year. So, for me, as I've always said before, I don't follow college football closely. So when I'm getting into the draft season, this is my first look at those players. I don't necessarily know their whole background history and whatnot. There's some high profile players that I might know more about, and I might know a little bit about the injury history or whatnot. But for the most part, I don't know. So that's when you'll hear certain things. But also in my philosophy, as I've always said, is I don't watch previous tapes. So when I'm evaluating a player for the 2018 draft, I'm only watching 2017 tape. I'm not going to go back and watch your 2016 tape. And I hear some people in the media, some people I know that do this also, and they always say, man, you should go watch his 2016 tape, or, go watch his junior year, or, watch his sophomore year. And I don't know. I don't want to do that. I shouldn't have to do that. And so for me, my thought process is that if I have to go watch your previous tape, even if it's good, it's a negative, because there's only a few things that can result from you being better the previous year. Either, number one, there's some type of injury, and when it comes to the draft, injury and medical flags are monumental. Do not kid yourself. There are people that have been drafted with red flags in the medical, but trust me, they would have been drafted a lot higher had they had a clean bill of health. That is one of the top things. And any Bears fans listening understand why. If you miss on a player because of medical, that's hard to come back from. And so, so if you were better last year, that's one of the things that can happen, and probably one of the worst things, that you were injured the previous year, or you're injured this year, or you got injured the previous year, and you just never recovered from that injury. That's one of the scariest things. And then the second thing, which to me is more scary than injury, is regression. And we talk about certain players getting better. Like this year, you'll talk about Lamar Jackson improving his game as a passer. You'll talk about like a Saquon Barkley that came back for another year and just looked even better or whatnot. There's always examples of people progressing, but rarely do we talk about regression, because that's the thing. When people put it on tape, people act like it's solidified in stone, and it's not. It's really not. And this is a whole nother conversation, but you're talking about whether you're evaluating a player and you're looking for a certain type of trait or technique, and they just don't have it, but you've seen them do it once or twice. That's a flash play. And I'll say, okay, he doesn't consistently do this, but he flashed the ability to do this. Once I know they have the ability to do it, then I can, go out on a limb. I can kind of project what I can do with them. That is a thing. However, when you're talking about tape from one year to the other, there's too much that can drastically change. And so when you have regression in the current year, it's hard for me to go back into the previous year and say, I see it there. That's fine and all, but we got to look at what's the current state of affairs. And that's how I go. So I do recognize, and I recognize more, that there can be certain situations. And yeah, you could probably take a glance at last year, but it doesn't matter what they did if they don't look like that player anymore. And so when we're talking about ceiling in the draft, we're talking about drafting players on something you might not have seen off athletic traits and potential and what you can mold them into. We're not talking about drafting them based off the player they used to be. That's a whole different conversation to me. I'm not going to draft a player based off what I saw the previous year. I have to, especially if this current year was just terrible, I got to see shades of that player, or I got to see, moments, or there's got to be a reason why they aren't the same player. I can't just draft them in hopes that I'm going to get the one that was better and not the one that I just saw that wasn't as good. And so regression is a huge flag to me. And that can happen for a number of reasons, but it's still a huge flag because none of those reasons are good. And one of those reasons might be medical. So again, we go back to this idea of injury and how big that is in the draft. So, looking at this year, you got some prime time examples. Number one, Derwin James out of Florida State, the safety. And again, you hear this to the point, it's kind of a cliche. He was a totally different player last year. And you're just like, okay, whatever. Derwin James, I would say in my case, it's 100% true. I finally went back and just, because I liked what I saw out of Derwin James, but I'm like, man, why was he so hyped? I don't see, this next level safety that everybody was hyping him up to be, like some athletic form of Cam Chancellor. And so I'm like, what's all the hype? And then I watched him last year before his knee injury. And yeah, that's a different player. That is a different player. It takes maybe 2 minutes of watching any game from last year to see that he's different. His movement skills are totally different. And so you're talking about a safety, which is a position where you're in space a lot and your movement skills really, really, really matter. And so while he still can move well, while he definitely can still hit, I still think he can jump and do stuff, as of right now. I think last year that was a night and day player. He just moves so much faster and with confidence. And that's the thing with injuries, especially knee. Everybody heals at a different rate. And then a lot of it comes down to your mental ability. Are you scared? Are you pulling up? Or are you going full go? That's the only way to get back into the shape you were before. So with Derwin James, I think he's a middle to late round, first round now. But last year, you're talking about a top 5 pick. And so with his size, with his speed and everything that he had, yeah, he was breathtaking. But I don't see that this year. And so some people will say, throw out this year, last year is what he is. I don't know that. I really don't. And, NFL teams that get close to these guys and look at the medicals at the combine and work them out, they don't even know. Sometimes you just don't know. And it takes a certain amount of guts to put a swing on the player that's in that position. And for me, I don't have those guts. Like, I'd rather have something that I'm comfortable with and more of a proven commodity. Not necessarily, like I said, in numbers and production, but I understand, okay, this is what they have. This is what they can be. With injuries, it's a question mark. You really don't know. And then you got guys like Arden Key, another primetime example, where there's so much going on with him. He's got red flag character issues, but outside of that, he showed up on this year 30 pounds heavier. Some people tell you he was trying to bulk up and play stronger because of his slight frame. Some people tell you he was out of shape. Then he was like, not dismissed, but he was excused from the team, ended up having surgery. But overall, his game, he just didn't look enthusiastic. He looked like he didn't care on too many times, I would say. Not all the time, but too many times. And so when you got a guy like that where he regressed, he was not the type of impact player he was last year. And was that due to his mindset? Was that due to the weight increase? Was the weight increase, good weight? Was it bad weight? Was it him just being lazy? Who knows? And then, there's questions about his character even before all this year. So there's so much that you got to kind of dig through. We can't do it, but people in the NFL, they got more sources they can dig through. But that's a question mark. That's a regression. Is he going to be the player you saw in his previous year where he was explosive and he was doing things, or what is he going to show up this guy? And so people got to remember, these are humans. And so, with the helmet and pads and everything, there's still humans underneath. And so even if they have that athleticism naturally, and that's their gift, it's still going to come down to your mindset, to your ability to work hard and execute on the field. And so it could be anything. And that's, again, I always say it's not black and white with football. It's very complex. Even with my level of coaching, or, where you got players that just something could happen. It could be something at home with mom and dad, or the cousin, a friend got killed, or now I'm working a job during the summer and, to help with the money, or I don't know, maybe everything's good, but my grades aren't that great and I'm really, academically inclined. You don't know. Maybe a girlfriend broke up with them. Maybe they're going, through something with their own personal identity. It doesn't have to be football. It doesn't have to be physical. Mental lapses as well happen, and they can become different players. And so that's why it's so big. And people think it's a cliche, but it's big to find guys that love the game. Guys that, will sweat and bleed this football game and really go out there for the love of the game, because some people can be derailed by other things. And it's not to say they aren't good players, but it's all about what risk are you willing to give up. And for me personally, I don't give up much risk. And as an evaluator, I won't ever hang my hat on a grade from something in the previous year. Even like if a guy was out this whole current year, I would look at his last year tape because it's all I got. I wouldn't grade them, but I would get an idea what type of player they were. I still wouldn't grade them though. And so, definitely if you got a guy that did play this year, I'm not going to go back to your previous tape. I mean, Darius Geis from LSU is another guy. Looked like a different player. I definitely think he was a different type of player as a running back last year than he was this year. But I think the way he ran this year is going to serve him better. He's more north and south, more deliberate about his runs. And a player's ability to get through injury and to still perform also says a lot about you. And also the opposite, if you can't perform through injury, different things of that nature. So I would never blame a player for injury. I'm just saying. And so when it comes to regression, when it comes to looking at tape from the previous year, I stay away from it. This year I've been a little more lenient just because of the high profile characters that were so different last year, but it doesn't factor much into my grade because a regression, for whatever reason, is a regression, and that hurts. It absolutely hurts. But you do got to dig in because of different levels, like I said. It could be, social thing. It could be a mindset thing. It could be a physical thing. It could be a scheme. Some people change coaches and schemes and they're just, they don't produce as well. It could be a number of things that you got to dig into. But for my purposes, to simplify it, you just don't go back to last year because you'll never know. Now, the NFL scouts and whatever that can evaluate and been tracking these guys, it's a little easier for them. And if it's a scheme situation where, like coach, he was better last year when they were more of a bump and run man-to-man team, they know that stuff. That's fine. And they don't lose out on that information. I might lose out on the information, but that's fine. For me, I really just evaluate what's in front of me from this year, and that's all I can really do. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go to the comment section. Let me know, what do you think about players like a Derwin James, like a Darius Geis, a Arden Key, where or you hear that they were so much better the previous year than they were this year? Do you only look at last year? Do you take it to an account, or how do you evaluate it, or how do you judge a player? Go to the comment section. Let me know. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, and thank you for listening.